Hi everybody, this is Tastus today at your Pushback channel. We hope you find this video informative, and while you're with us, please take a moment to subscribe below. Please remember, all our essays are available in printed book format. This video essay will discuss some of the issues around the many fake and false rape claims and allegations we see today as part of the wider ideological stage drama of SJW activism. Perhaps the most infamous false rape claim of the last 20 years or so is what became known as the Duke Lacrosse case, which we will focus on in this piece. This will be an examination of how due legal process in the Western democracies is increasingly being eroded and transformed into an exercise of runaway politicised ideology rather than facts and evidence. So powerful and corrupting due legal process, when accusations just don't stand up to basic fact-checking, or even when the accused is obviously innocent, ideology takes over and guilt is just asserted and assumed along sociological lines. It's a recipe for societal destruction. Moreover, those who were once the protectors of legal truth, evidence and prudence, and by extension due legal process, are now amongst its most fervent enemies. This includes law enforcement authorities, lawmakers, reporting agencies, academia and the media. Similarly, the professional, moral, grandstanding agitator class is now so large and well funded, they mobilise to appear all over the nation and internationally at the slightest opportunity. Arriving at college campuses, outside courtrooms and in town squares to whip up hysteria before due cause has been established or before charges have even been laid or a first court appearance. Duke University was considered by many to be an elite academic institution in North Carolina in the United States. Full fee paying students typically coming from the higher achievers, money, and mostly white and male. The lacrosse sports team, and a lot of people ask me, well, what's lacrosse? And I guess a very simple way of expressing it is it's sort of like a game of hockey where the ball is thrown from a net placed at the end of the hockey stick. So the lacrosse sports team was having a party at one of the residences of a team captain. Exotic dancers were booked for the party and 2 black women were sent by the stripper agency. No evidence exists to suggest that the people at the party knew in advance the dancers were black. It was an even chance the dancers could have been white, Asian or Latino. One of the dancers was able to perform the exotic dance while the other could not, due to alleged inebriation and an unclear but seemingly debilitating mental condition. The dancers became engaged in a heated argument, and then one dancer stormed off and the other was taken to the local hospital due to her inebriation and pre-existing confused mental state. Now, the bit that follows is critical to understand, as it is where many of these cases get ideological lift-off, and once it is Marxist, morally airborne, it's very difficult to stop. And it goes like this. A night-duty junior medical orderly examining the inebriated dancer asked if the dancer has been assaulted or raped as part of a series of routine form-filler questions. The dancer now has a choice to accept personal responsibility for the fiasco of the night, being drunk on the job. The booking agency will probably not use her again, and she may even not get paid for this job as she had not fulfilled the requirements. Or she can claim to be a victim of some politically correct anything, it doesn't really matter, which will then magically wash away all her own failings and get her lots of "you're so important, you're such a victim" attention. The mentally unbalanced stripper chooses victim and asserts rape, and the rape box on that form gets ticked by the medical orderly. Many reasonable people would think that the claims of a mentally unbalanced and drunk stripper might require at least some corroboration, yet here in this universe it all works in reverse. Being mentally unbalanced actually makes her more of a victim and adds impetus, gravitas and momentum to the whole exercise. And so it goes on. An equally junior ideologically gender studies brainwashed, and we live in a rape epidemic after all, social worker then talks to the inebriated and deeply troubled exotic dancer. Straight white boys, university for rich white kids, poor working class black girl showing her body for money, white boy money. The pressure in the ideological volcano is building. The fantasies of the gender studies classroom can now be played out in real life. Each junior low-paid activist trained employee hands it on to another, each one starting from a position of the rape did occur, even though there's no evidence. Don't doubt it, don't question it. Many forms are now being filled out, many boxes on those forms being ticked, and the pressure in that ideological virtue volcano can no longer be contained. They all want the rape to be true or are fearful of questioning or doubting it. Most of the employees handling this information are simple people on low wages who have all attended ideological all men are rapist oppressor courses and white privilege black oppression courses with quarterly refreshers. Money, race, class, gender, all neatly packaged for even the most discerning SJW activist. It's a sociology, gender studies wet dream come true. Typically, and before SJW fantasy justice becomes the norm, the first point, or became the norm I should say, the first point of contact for reporting rape was a police station. Going to a police station and filing a rape complaint required providing reasonable evidence and proof while being interviewed by a law enforcement officer who had a legal right and responsibility to ask such questions. That is, the reporting and the evidence fact-checking took place at the same time by the same person or persons. At the very least, it wasn't a case until it was prima facie facts checked and evidence initially corroborated. But not anymore. That's all changed, and the effect on jurisprudence has been devastating. The political correctness SJW epidemic has changed the fundamental nature of the verification process and moved evidence and verification of evidence from the time of first reporting of an alleged crime to a midway point down and along the event chain. Remember all those forms getting filled out, all those boxes getting ticked? That's all happening now before a police officer even gets to talk to the accuser. That is, today, corroborated evidence comes only after a de facto case has already been ideologically invented and created. That is, facts appear well after ideologies have already attached their cause to the situation, meaning they are far more likely to ignore, downplay or conceal evidence that does not match their now attached ideological predispositions. A hospital admissions officer ticks the rape box. On the form, a social worker is automatically in the chain of escalation. Policy and procedure require it. The social worker, who will either be a sociology graduate or most likely a gender studies major, is heavily predisposed to believe and not question the allegation. And anyway, the social worker is only saying it was rape because the admission orderly had already said it by ticking the box. So the next box on the form gets ticked, and the next person who handles it also ticks the box on the form because the previous people did. An intern doctor now conducts an examination and assumes rape because the forms already on file have the rape box ticked. It's easier not to question it. The next person after says it was rape because that's what the one before said. The doctor's examination confirms sexual relations had recently taken place and confirms some bruising. The bruising was pre-existing from a fall while intoxicated, and the sexual relations were with sundry male partners, as later DNA analysis showed. But critically, not the DNA of any of the accused in the lacrosse team. The dancer continues to lie and stays with a rape allegation. The district attorney soon decides to withhold this critical DNA evidence from the defence. Later, when being cross-examined by a high-powered attorney, a terrified doctor who ticked the rape box form, and he's just a doctor intern, cries out from the witness box. He's near sobbing. "I only ticked the rape box on the form because the social worker did it before me, admission orderly before her. I didn't mean to commit perjury," says the sobbing doctor. "I didn't mean for that man to go to prison. I was only doing my job." But no, you were not doing your job. You did commit perjury and you did bear false witness in what is a legal document with the power of evidence in court. The simple box-ticking box on the form becomes a legal document that can and is tendered as evidence in a court and in effect reverses the burden of proof. The accused must now refute this, even though the box-ticked form is an unsubstantiated allegation taken by an orderly with no legal authority or training. Ideology transforms the forms with the tick boxes into a document of legal power it was never intended to be. Still with no verification of facts, the case file, yes, it's now a case even though no due cause or fact verification has taken place at this point, goes to a legal aid lawyer, a special legal aid lawyer with special ideological training in gender and race issues. Simmering with class and gender hatreds, trained to believe all men are rapists and all white folks, particularly males, to be evil. It's the SJW view of world equality. The lying exotic dancer is encouraged to go for it. We will support you. I have had a quite unofficial word with the DA's office. If you decide to proceed, we will support you every step of the way. Don't let these white boys get away with it. Send a message to black girls and black people everywhere that we are putting Whitey on notice. A reference is made to how well off the white boys' families are. Maybe the word compensation is whispered. A reference to how Whitey owes us for slavery is mentioned. A one-sided, short and acutely exaggerated rendition of Jim Crow is thrown in for the stirring and inflammatory effect. Informal back channels of communication are now humming. Legal Aid has clandestinely informed professional agitator groups who promise to send propagandists and agitators to campus and to protest outside of City Hall. These damn white rapists, all imagined portrayed in grotesque SJW caricature, can't be allowed to get away with it. Well, no evidence has been tested. The stripper's not even been interviewed by police. No case actually exists. But hey, who cares? One paid agitator who shows up on college campuses even had a scholarship to go and agitate. There's actually such a thing, an agitation scholarship. Social affairs reporters on the media are primed. They're going to turn up the heat, coordinating with student femi activist groups. Social media is going ballistic with righteous indignation and highly prejudicial assertions regarding the accused. Mobs appear outside of the residence of the players. The entire lacrosse team is declared as culpable by student activist groups, and the accused are harassed and treated with extreme prejudice by other students and college staff members alike in a wickedly shameful display of mob hysteria. The madness goes on, even though no due cause for charges or charges have been laid and no facts have been established. The government stands by pretending to be powerless to stop the madness or punish those who so flagrantly advocate lynch mob justice. Spotting a socio-political opportunity, the DA's office leans on the local police and requests an officer known to be very sympathetic to women and taking an attitude of women never lie in rape cases to be appointed to interview the exotic dancer. This officer has done the full round of courses on rape as an epidemic, campus rape being a super epidemic, the patriarchy, white oppression of blacks, the whole SJW battery of courses. The local college gender studies professor who was consulted beforehand may have even recommended this officer, who is known as a sympathiser. Much of the mainstream media, including once reputable journals, decided to assume the guilt of the accused and produced inflammatory editorial to that effect, playing heavily on the race and gender card. Zealous SJW attitude-filled writers were given the column inches to ply their hysterical hatreds and prejudices, all with senior editorial approval. It's not looking good for the accused. The all-powerful ideological machinery is sweeping all before it. It looks like these innocent young men will be going to prison for a very long time. And that's how it very well could have turned out, but the families of the accused were not without means. In the face of this Himalayan-level injustice, they fought back. In spite of the SJW sympathies of the interviewing police officer, once facts are added to this crazy process, the dancer's story and the SJW narrative, firmly attached to it, start to fall apart. The dancer claims to have been kidnapped, assaulted and raped by 4 white men in a small home bathroom. One of the men accused wasn't even in the house at the time and can prove it. No DNA evidence links any of the accused to the exotic dancer, and in fact, no DNA exists to link any of the team to the stripper and the false allegations she is making. If, as the dancer was falsely claiming, she had been assaulted and raped, some DNA evidence would have existed. To add to what now would have been quite obvious uncertainty in the prosecution camp, the stripper kept changing key details of her story. It was looking like a prosecution house of cards. Because of the way these ideologically infused cases are now conducted, they take on a momentum of their own, a form of twisted moral kinetic energy. All the people in the prosecutorial chain are activists who agonisingly want the rape story to be true. Keep in mind the effect politically invented, taxpayer-funded moral panic can have on the procedures of law and justice. Activists are chosen for these roles in the legal chain. Each person in the prosecution side has been subject to compulsory classes that assert rape is everywhere, particularly on college campuses. Also that most rapists, so the propaganda goes, get away with it. Well, it must be true, or the government, with your tax dollars, wouldn't be paying for all these activist people to tell this stuff and make them attend classes to listen to all this drivel. But it's not true. As any sensible, reasonable person knows, the rape epidemic crisis is a pure invention. It's all hysterical propaganda cooked up by gender studies activists and paid for with your taxpayer dollars. The wider law enforcement community hand in activity reports only to be asked why no rapists are on the sheet and why no white rapists. We're in the middle of a rape crisis and you can't find a single rapist to report on. What's wrong with you? Every night mainstream news pushes the rape epidemic narrative, and it all has the effect of fueling and fanning the flames. Fancifully assuming a rape epidemic, which activists assert is underreported by all those allegedly terrified women, medical centres and hospital admission centres could be potential points of information, allegation, gathering and points of interception, but an ideologically politicised process where someone making an unproven, untested allegation must be believed and is called a victim before any crime has been established creates a deeply prejudicial starting point to all cases. As many as 5 or more taxpayer-funded or taxpayer-subsidised propaganda-infused people may handle the matter, the allegation, before any evidentiary questions are asked or verification is attempted. In the case of social workers, rape support centres and black legal aid, these people are likely to be at the apex of strident gender-race activism. They might fairly swoon at the thought of a white boy's scalp. The evidence contamination issue is a serious problem, as the first box tick nominating rape is the standard and starting point of each handler in the chain thereafter. Once in train, this contamination in effect positions the rape allegation as quasi-fact and thus automatically reverses the burden of proof, so that the man must now prove he didn't do it, rather than the state prove rape actually occurred. Desperate to hang on to the false rape allegations, the chief prosecutorial officer took the astonishing step of deciding to withhold certain evidence and conceal key evidence, such as the DNA tests, from the defence. To legal scholars or students of jurisprudence, such a step by a district attorney, who is soon to be up for re-election, to bury and withhold evidence, even to the point of denying the existence of such evidence. This is a huge step into the realms of illegality, which include acts tantamount to grand conspiracy to commit perjury in a court of law. Just to reinforce, a court of law, not an SJW undergraduate playground. That this withholding and concealing of evidence was done so casually and with a firm belief they would not be caught, or if caught, not held accountable, is a testament to how corrupted and compromised the legal profession may have become. The probability is very high the DA's office and associated administration had done more or less the same thing before, with perhaps lesser profile cases and against litigants who could not fight back. Tragically, such behaviour may even be routine. Now just consider this for a moment. Everyone on the prosecution side went along with the concealment of evidence. Everybody went along with it and kept the charge and innocent men under what must have been near unendurable months of mental torture, and they knew all along that the men were innocent. Not one person in the prosecution side thought it was wrong to conceal exonerating evidence or wrong to manufacture incriminating evidence. Leaks to activist groups were standard practice, and this also was seen as okay. And make no mistake, this is the SJW universe that we now exist in. Coming back to the private initiatives of the accused men's families and the private investigators they hired, this may have been decisive in exposing the falsely based and fraudulent charges laid by the state. Without it, these innocent men may have gone to prison. In the event the prosecution's case fell over, once the evidence held by the state, particularly the DNA evidence, was presented, and the scale of the DA's conspiracy to conceal the evidence was exposed. In the wash-up, the DA lost his job and was disbarred, but spent only 1 day in prison. No other prominent person associated with this breathtaking miscarriage of justice lost their job or was prosecuted, that I'm aware of. The families of the falsely accused men have had to resort to civil lawsuits to gain compensation for the costs and the ordeal generally. So what has the justice system learned from this episode apart from lip service platitudes? Nothing. That's right, they've learned nothing. Activist ideologue DAs are still the DAs of choice, and SJW operatives masquerading as independent and partial officers of the state or legal aid and the contamination of evidence may even be worse today than it was 10 years ago. The Western civis will suffer and is suffering accordingly. Keep in mind the socio-legal architecture that supports these travesties is voted for and funded by your taxes and approved by mostly white, heterosexual lawmakers. Why? Why would elected representatives sworn to uphold the law and the Constitution be so keen to undermine due legal process? If lawmakers are not prepared to support and protect due legal process, vote them out of office. What we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history, and those who do not understand the mistakes of the past are doomed to relive them, and that goes for any society. This is Tassus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for watching.